let's look at how to actually deliver that value with an efficient pipeline. And we have helped many companies set this up. Mikko already pointed to the example of Outokumpu, a steel manufacturer, but we have also worked with a logistics equipment manufacturing company, an industrial goods company, and a global OEM manufacturer, for instance, on this value pipeline. And the overall structure always ends up looking pretty similar on the high level. So you start by identifying the promising AI opportunities across the different business functions. Then you refine those opportunities into AI solution concepts, and you estimate their value and their feasibility to justify moving forward in the pipeline or in the funnel. And that's why we drew it as kind of an arrow that's getting more narrow, because you are dropping out the lower quality opportunities all the way through the process, and only the best ones make it further. Then you move into the proof stage, where you prove the technical feasibility of the solution with a POC, and you also try to get some evidence of the business value creation already, so that you can then commit to building the first production version of the solution, which is typically a pilot. And finally, you scale the production version by extending the feature set and by maintaining the solution and setting up monitoring the solution as needed. We've also seen that the typical problems or bottlenecks that organizations experience on this value pipeline look pretty similar from one company to another. Here are some of the most typical ones. So starting from the left-hand side in the identify phase, for instance, we often see that there are too few good AI ideas coming from the business to feed the pipeline. And this might be, for instance, because the maturity of AI is not that high in the business functions, so they cannot detect how AI might help them yet, or there isn't just enough pressure from the business management to actually start creating value with AI. We also see that AI opportunities are often ideated in silos, or even by individuals, not across business functions. So you lose the possibility to find these value stream opportunities that Niklas talked about that can be really transformative. We also see that it often happens so that when employees become AI curious, everything starts to look like an AI problem to them. And they start requesting AI solutions to problems that could even be solved with RPA or even traditional BI reporting. In the refine phase, we see often that costs and risks are not adequately considered in that stage, or that the value potential is not estimated. And this might then lead to that you invest in solutions that are not actually possible to implement and not acceptable in the end, or that business isn't committed to implementing those solutions because you haven't justified the value potential. In the proof phase, our clients often run into problems with data availability, quality, and connectivity. And they also often see scope creep and timeline slippage when the concept has not been well enough defined or the process isn't well enough managed. The build phase is often where we see a handover or transition from ownership by a centralized AI team or the IT organization to ownership by business. And this is a clear breaking point. This is often where it turns out that business isn't really committed to invest in building in production those ideas that they were initially quite curious about when they still didn't have to pay for it. And finally, in the scaling phase, we, for instance, see that even if a solution is built into production, then the end users are not necessarily willing to adopt it widely into use because the solution actually didn't fit their workflows, because it wasn't co-designed with the end users, because they feel like they were not engaged in the process and the solution was not invented here. We also see that the solution is not monitored or maintained properly, which might lead to not retraining the solutions. With AI solutions, you always need to consider whether they need to be retrained occasionally or not, and then that easily tends to get forgotten. And finally, the actual value creation of the solution is not often measured in production. As Mikko said, that the target should be delivering controller-proven value. That's often missing. And then we don't also get this feedback pipeline or feedback process from the production stage back to earlier stages in the pipeline so that we could actually learn from what we built before into our new use cases. Fortunately, we've also found a lot of structural solutions to these problems. And here are just a few examples that we've helped our clients design and implement. So for instance, you can do facilitated AI opportunity mapping and refinement together with the business unit. You can focus strongly on business value right from the start and connect your AI initiatives to the business priorities, the annual plans, the must-win battles, the personal scorecards, whatever the business people actually use to steer their actions. You can have an open mindset and a wide toolbox to choose the right tool for the right job. So not thinking that everything is a Gen AI problem, but choosing traditional machine learning, intelligent process automation, low-code solutions like Copilot Studio, or even external partner solutions as needed. So making those make or buy decisions as well that Mikko mentioned. You also need to gradually reduce uncertainty along the pipeline. So you need to tolerate quite a lot of uncertainty in the beginning, and you need to establish minimum viable governance in each stage so that you do not kill the ideas and you do not diminish the volume of new ideas with too much governance in the beginning. You can create fusion teams to focus on AI opportunities and functions, and you can assign AI designers who can work with AI accelerated workflows as catalysts to the AI transformation. You should establish a transparent AI portfolio that has clear status and responsibilities for each opportunity so that you can see and track how they are actually progressing through the pipeline, and you can see who's accountable for each of the opportunities. You should have clear deliverables and decision points along the way. And you should have a clear agreement between business and IT for who's funding which stage of the pipeline. Of course, you need strong agile development practices. And if you are able to increase the AI literacy of your organization, that will help you feed more ideas into the beginning of the funnel. And finally, you should build reusable templates for your solutions, for your data products, for your MCPs, and for the semantic layer, which Niklas will mention briefly later, to make sure that you're not building your AI solutions as one-off, but you're actually building them on a scalable platform. I'd just like to highlight two of these solutions in a bit more detail. Let's look at the fusion teams and the role of the AI designers. So a fusion team is a multidisciplinary team, also sometimes called a pod, that focuses on solving a particular problem or building a particular solution. And that team is supposed to have the end-to-end skills to build the whole thing by themselves. In an ideal scenario, they have full-time allocations, so they operate with high autonomy. They have their own backlog, their own agile way of working, and they are quite free from the organizational bureaucracy and reporting requirements to all kinds of steering groups and whatnots. And Gartner has made this term famous a few years ago when they reported that a fusion team on average can be 2.5 times faster in digital solution development than a traditional centralized model. And that what we are seeing is that more mature organizations are using these kind of fusion teams for their flagship AI initiatives. So if they really want to push an AI initiative that has strategic significance, they can dedicate a full-time fusion team to work on that. And what we see here now is an example of what that kind of fusion team could look like. So you have a solution owner who's sitting in the business function, and they are responsible for the business problem. They are responsible for driving the adoption of the solution when it's eventually built. Then you have the data scientist, who's the wizard who actually builds the models and the algorithms. And then you have the data or ML engineer who builds the data pipelines and sets up the AI infrastructure for the solution. You usually also need a domain specialist who knows the business context, the business workflows, the business data, the meaning of the terms, and so on. And that's often an actual end user of the solution. So they're actually included in this core team. And you might have an agile coach, for instance, to ensure that the team is working smoothly and iterating quickly. But then typically you also need an AI designer who's actually the person responsible for designing a solution concept that is both valuable and feasible. And we see that less mature organizations also emulate this model by setting up what we call virtual fusion teams. So they have these kind of structures, but people are not actually allocated full time. So they have lots of other responsibilities, and then you lose a lot of the benefits of this model. They might also be not just focusing on one flagship AI solution, but they might be focusing on a business area, a business function, for instance. And that's fine, it's a good way to get started, but it won't accelerate you as quickly as having dedicated fusion teams for your flagship initiatives. And finally, let's look briefly at the role of an AI designer, because we have seen that this can be a real catalyst to your AI transformation, especially in the earlier stages of maturity. So in that stage, it's often the situation that business people don't quite understand AI well enough to see how it could help them solve their problems. And there's also no true agile product ownership capability within the business functions yet. So what the AI designers can then do, they can engage with the business people to identify problems that AI can help solve that are actually valuable. They can connect the AI development initiatives for business objectives, roadmaps, annual plans, must-win battles, scorecards, whatever. They can co-design those solutions together with the end users and the business stakeholders to ensure that the concepts are actually desirable, viable, feasible, and responsible. They can steer the development of AI POCs and pilots toward value delivery and make sure that we stay on scope and stay on the agreed time box. And while they're doing that, they can also introduce new AI-accelerated workflows for design and prototyping of digital solutions, thereby increasing the AI maturity of the organization. But this is not an easy role to play, and it's not easy to find this kind of people because you need quite a versatile competence set. These people need to be good at business case modeling so that they can find and justify the value. They need to be good at user-centric design and human insight so that they can engage with the business users and understand what helps them in their context. They need to understand the possibilities and limitations of AI so that they can design solution concepts that are realistic and feasible. And they need to be good with AI tools and AI-accelerated workflows in order to apply those into the design process. And finally, they actually need to be quite capable in navigating organizational politics as well, because they tend to be the bridge builders between business and IT. And as the organizational maturity increases, the role of the AI designers tends to become smaller because the business can take more and more responsibility for this role. But in earlier maturity, we're seeing that this can really be a catalyst for your AI transformation.